So the next section, and now we're going to talk about the history of genetics. So this question is very easy. Which of the following statement is true about mental? And as you're watching the video, and we will discuss in a lot of detail in this class, A is incorrect. Why? Because actually nobody paid attention to Mendel. Yeah, actually he was forgotten, and he has to be rediscovered. So we will show you that we will talk about how Charles Darwin, was looking for the basis of the inheritance, and he lives at the same time that Mendel, and they said that Mendel sent his data, his work to Darwin, but Darwin never read it, and actually nobody pay attention to what Mendel said, and if it's not because somebody else rediscovered Mendel, we would have lost all this knowledge, and it's something that is very interesting, and we will talk about that. So, but A is wrong. B, if you read B, he believed that genetic traits of parents are usually blend with their children. So we will talk about why not only this one is wrong, but this one is wrong. He actually didn't believe in blending inheritance. He actually believed in the opposite. The right answer will be this one. That these ideas about genetics are very general, and they work for plants and for animals, and for all the other organisms. So let's talk about that. So D is the right answer. If you remember that he was working with plants and he made thousands of process, and we will talk about that. And then in the video they talk about this, that Mendelian inheritance is actually very useful, and it helps us to predict diseases in humans. There is actually a new career that is called genetic counseling that is very important, that it can help you if you are going to have kids, or to think about carefully about if you can or not having kids and what are the implications. And although, to be honest with you, some of what we thought that they were only Mendelian inheritance that we can explain only with one gene, right now it seems to be not as simple. We will talk about how, although Mendel is very important, the environment also plays a key role. But we will talk about this during the class in more detail. Okay, this is something very interesting, and is that right now I find that it could be funny, but we can talk about that. Why, when the first microscope, when the first scientists start looking at the first cells and at the miniature life in at the microscopic level, they found that studies suggest that what? So they found that, and the answer will be D. As you're watching the video, that babies must start off as a perfect miniatures inside of either the egg or the sperm. And if you remember the homunculus, that was something that actually the microscope, as they were not as good, they believed that that was true. So D is the answer, and A for sure is not the answer, because the first microscope, they didn't have the magnifications to see this transcription and translation. This is relatively new, something that we knew just a few decades ago, that humans have cells. At that time, that was not one of the first, we didn't know about cells. This came, the cell theory, we will talk about that. This was something posterior. And the existence of DNA, as I said before, this is not possible. This is just not possible with the early microscopy. So this happened. This happened later with the cell theory, and we will talk about the cell theory. What is that? And this definitely happened. This happened later, a few decades, just a few decades ago, and we will show you how they found the existence of DNA. And if you remember the video, you remember that here you can see the sperm and the egg. Here they thought that inside of that there was a tiny human or a tiny woman, and this is called a homunculus, and we will talk about that. Okay, now we're going to move to 1950, and we're going to talk about one very important scientist and her name was Rosalind Franklin. And we will talk about how when she studied X-ray diffraction, she was able to study to find the DNA. And we will talk about all this controversy about her because although she deserved not only one but two Nobel Prize, she died doing these experiments. And it's very interesting because the people who stole her research actually got the Nobel Prize. So we will talk about that. And here she was very famous. She found that, and this is possibly one of the most important pictures in biology. That you can see that this means that a double helix is a structure, and we will talk about all her experiments. Okay, now very easy question: which molecule carries the genetic material? So definitely it will not be cell. RNA in most of the organisms it will not be the RNA. It will not be the proteins, and it will be the DNA. So very easy. And you saw the experiments. We will study those experiments at the end of this course. How using viruses after the Spanish flu, people started studying, getting very interested in trying to study viruses to stop this pandemic to occur. And as a result of that, they found the DNA, the genetic material. And possibly this is one of the reasons why we found this vaccine so fast, because we have been working for a long time. In the last pandemic, we didn't know that the DNA had the genetic material. Now we know, and we have a lot of techniques. So now this question, the genetic code is. So what are the characteristics of the genetic code that is shared by all the organisms? This is correct. Shared by vertebrates is correct, but it's also shared by plants and by um, bacteria and different organisms different from each organism. This is incorrect. Only shared by human. This is incorrect. So although these two are correct, this is the best answer. So and if you remember this part of the video, they talk about that the genetic code is shared for all living organisms. So for example, I don't know if you hear about this molecule protein called green fluorescent protein. It was taken from an organism called jellyfish. I don't know. Let's suppose that this is a jellyfish, and they put it, for example, in fruit fly. Yeah, and as we share all share the same genetic code. If you take a gene from a jellyfish uh, that is fluorescent, now so let's put it in green. It's green fluorescent protein. Now this one was fluorescent. Now when you put it in a fruit fly, now the fruit fly will be fluorescent. And we will talk about that if it's ethically correct to to do this kind of things. And for example, there are pets that now they are selling that are fluorescent. Is this ethical or not? And if you remember, he talked about that, and you can go back in the video and hear about the genetic code. This is another easy question, and here I'm asking you for a scientific name that you hear in the video that is similar to the common fruit fly, because fruit flies are very important for genetic research, and we will talk about them. So the answer will be Drosophila melanogaster, and I will show you that melanogaster means melano means black, black, and gaster means stomach. So these flies have a characteristic of have the abdomen with a dark coloration. And on the other hand, these Canis domesticus and Canis familiaris are different names, scientific names for dogs, some that are not used anymore, some that are still used. Sometimes from time to time they change the names a little bit. And the Homo sapiens is the name scientific name for humans. The Homo sapiens sapiens, and here is for dog, and here is for dog, and this one will be for fruit fly. So yes, this is one of the names that you have learned, Drosophila melanogaster. And why Drosophila melanogaster, why fruit flies are so important? Because, for example, similar genes that are expressed in fruit fly eyes are also expressed in some parts of humans. And also, believe it or not, the same thing happens with other structures. And these can help us to understand better the genetics of humans. So, for example, the same genes that produce tumors in fruit flies can also produce tumors, cancer in humans. And some students at CMU are studying, working with me, understanding some of those things. And yeah, so and not only for studying cancer, but studying when we compare the digestive system, the circulatory system, all these systems, we still share a lot of genes with fruit flies, and this is a key organism to study that. And why? Because fruit flies are called model organisms. And what is a model organism? Model organisms are species that are widely studied and widely used in research. Why? Because they are very easy to maintain and breed. So, for example, fruit flies, they you have a new generation every 2 weeks. So, for example, this is very useful when you can do experiments every 2 weeks, and they are easy to manipulate in the lab. So, as they are so small, you can have thousands in the lab, and you can sleep them and work with them. If you, for example, having an elephant, it will be impossible, but working with a fruit fly will be easy. And this is not the only model organism. So, for example, mouse are very important, frogs are very important for developmental biology, zebrafish are also very important because they're also important. They take a little bit longer than fruit flies to grow, but they are closer to humans. And on the other hand, for example, some that are reproduced much faster, but still they are farther from human are geese. But still, we share some genes with geese, and they're for example used to study cell division because we still share a lot of genes to divide cells. And on this, we can also, for studying agriculture, we can use the monster plant or Arabidopsis thaliana, and also another example of an animal that can be a model organism are the roundworms or sea elegans because they have very few cells and they are transparent, so you can study, for example, in neuroscience using these kind of organisms because they have very few neurons, and it's very interesting to study such a simple organisms and see how they are able with few cells to achieve so many functions. So, okay, to summarize, there is something called model organisms, and we will talk about that during the entire course. Every scientist uses a different organism to answer different questions. And why? Because these model organisms have traits that allow them to be used a lot in the lab. So we know a lot about them because they are easy to maintain and breed, because they can reproduce. They have short life cycles, for example, because they are easy to manipulate. So some of them, they can be very small and they can reproduce very fast. Okay, so remember, study what is a model organism for the test.